The room was silent. Only one sound could be heard, a slow ticking clock on the wall. Outside, the sky was still dark. The launch pad stood quiet, cold, and alone. In the distance, the Soyuz rocket waited, tall, still, powerful. This was not just another morning. This was the morning of the Horizon's mission. Inside the control center, men and women sat in front of glowing screens. No one was talking much. Every face looked serious. Every eye was fixed on data, numbers, and signals. Years of hard work had led to this moment. One mistake and everything could be lost. The Soyuz rocket had a long history. It had flown many missions before. People trusted it, but space does not care about history. Space only cares about now. Suddenly, a red light blinked on one screen. An engineer looked up. He leaned closer. His heart started to beat faster. Something was wrong. He checked the data again, then again. The numbers did not change. His voice was low but sharp. "Control, we have a problem." The room became even more silent. All eyes turned toward the main screen. The problem was small, very small, but in space missions, small problems can become deadly. Fuel pressure was not stable. If the pressure dropped at the wrong time, the rocket could fail. If it failed after launch, there would be no second chance. The mission director stood up slowly. He had seen problems before, but this one came at the worst possible time. The countdown had already started. Outside, the rocket was ready. Inside, the clock was moving forward. There was no time to waste. The mission director took a deep breath. Then he made the call, "Connect me to the launch team." This was the desperate call. Across the base, alarms stayed silent, but tension grew fast. Engineers checked systems again and again. Computers worked without rest. Hands moved quickly over keyboards. Every second mattered. The rocket did not know there was a problem. It stood calm, waiting for fire. The Horizon's mission was not just about reaching orbit. It was about proving something bigger. It was about pushing limits, about going beyond what was known. But now, everything was at risk. One engineer whispered, "If we stop the launch now, we may lose the window." The launch window was short. Miss it, and the mission could be delayed for months. Millions of dollars. Years of planning. Another engineer replied, "If we don't stop it, we may lose the rocket." No one wanted to say the word failure. The fuel system was checked again, still unstable. The mission director looked at the screen, then at the countdown clock. T-minus 25 minutes. The desperate call reached the launch pad team. They listened carefully. Tools were prepared, procedures were reviewed, but some problems cannot be fixed on the ground. Some problems must be faced in the air. The rocket was full of fuel. Powerful energy slept inside it. Once released, nothing could stop it. The decision was heavy: continue or abort. The control room felt smaller. The air felt thick. The mission director spoke again, calm but firm. "Give me your best answer." A senior engineer checked the data one last time. He paused, then he spoke. "The system is risky, but within limits." That was not a perfect answer. But space missions are never perfect. T-minus 15 minutes. Outside, lights turned on around the rocket. Steam flowed from its sides like breath in the cold air. The Soyuz looked alive. Inside the control room, no one blinked. This mission carried more than machines. It carried hope. It carried trust. It carried the dream of reaching orbit safely. The Horizon's mission had reached its first test, not in space, but on Earth. The mission director closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he opened them. "We continue," he said. The room did not cheer. No one smiled. They knew the truth. The real danger had not even started yet. As the countdown moved forward, one question remained in every mind. When the engines ignite, will the Soyuz rise toward the stars, or will this desperate call be remembered as the last warning? The clock kept ticking, and space was waiting. The decision was made. The launch would continue, but the control room did not relax. Not even for 1 second. The Soyuz rocket stood outside, covered in white steam. The cold air wrapped around its metal body. It looked calm, but inside, powerful forces were waiting to wake up. Soyuz was not a new rocket. It had flown for decades. It had seen success. It had seen failure. It had survived where others did not. Many rockets came and went. Soyuz stayed. That is why it was chosen for the Horizon's mission. Engineers trusted it. Astronauts trusted it. Nations trusted it, but even legends can fall. Inside the control room, screens showed the rocket's heartbeat, pressure, temperature, fuel flow. Every system spoke through numbers. One screen showed the fuel system again, still not perfect, but still alive. The narrator's voice stayed calm. "Soyuz is simple, strong, reliable, but space does not reward trust. It only rewards precision." The rocket was built in stages. Each stage had one job, and each job had to be perfect. If one stage failed, the mission failed. There was no backup rocket. There was no second try today. T-minus 10 minutes. Outside, the sky slowly changed color. The night began to fade. A thin line of light appeared on the horizon. It felt symbolic. A new mission, a new test. Inside the Soyuz capsule, everything was tight and small. No luxury, no comfort, just switches, wires, and metal walls. Soyuz was not designed to impress. It was designed to survive. The Horizon's mission depended on that survival. The rocket's engines were old in design but powerful in action. They burned fuel fast and hard. Once they started, they could not stop. That was the danger. That was the power. An engineer spoke quietly, almost to himself. Once ignition starts, we cross the point of no return. Everyone knew what that meant. The rocket would either fly or fail. There was no pause button. T-7 minutes. Automatic systems took control. Computers now guided the rocket. Humans watched. Humans waited. Soyuz trusted machines more than people at this stage. That trust was earned over time. The narrator continued, "This rocket has heard many countdowns. It has felt fire many times. It remembers pressure. It remembers heat. It remembers the way to space." But memory alone was not enough. Today's mission was different. Different payload, different orbit, different risks. The Horizon's mission pushed Soyuz to its limits. T-5 minutes. Fuel pumps worked harder, valves opened and closed, tiny actions with huge consequences. The control room felt frozen, breathing slowed, talking stopped. Every second sounded loud. The fuel pressure warning blinked once then stopped. No one spoke. Was it fixed or was it hiding? In spaceflight, silence can be dangerous. The mission director stared at the screen. He did not blink. He knew this rocket's history. He knew its strength. But he also knew the truth. Rockets do not care about hope. They only follow physics. T-3 minutes. Cameras showed close views of Soyuz. Ice cracked and fell from its sides. The rocket looked like it was shedding its skin, preparing, waiting. The narrator's voice grew deeper. This is the moment when doubt becomes real, when trust is tested, when history watches. The Horizon's mission was no longer a plan. It was becoming an action. T-2 minutes. The launch pad cleared. All people moved away. The rocket stood alone now. No human hands could touch it again. From this point forward, only commands and signals could guide it. T-60 seconds. The control room came alive with quiet voices. Guidance go. Fuel go. Systems go. One by one green lights appeared. The fuel system light stayed yellow, not red, not green, yellow. The most dangerous color. The mission director clenched his hands. Then the final call came. "Soyuz, you are go for ignition." The engines had not started yet, but everyone felt it. The ground beneath the rocket waited for fire, and far above, orbit waited for a visitor. The narrator ended the part with a question. "When the flames rise, will Soyuz remember the way to the stars?" The clock reached 0, but nothing happened. For one long second, the world waited. Then the ground shook. Fire exploded beneath the Soyuz rocket. A deep, powerful sound filled the air. The engines came alive, louder than thunder, stronger than any storm. Soyuz was awake. Inside the control room, no one breathed. All eyes were locked on the screens. This was the point of no return. Once the engines started, the rocket could not stop. There was no break, no pause, no escape. The narrator spoke slowly. "This is the moment every mission fears and desires. Moment when machines decide fate." The rocket began to rise, very slowly at first, then faster. Fire pushed against Earth. Smoke covered the launch pad. The Soyuz climbed, breaking free from gravity's grip. The Horizon's mission had left the ground, but danger was everywhere. Inside the rocket, forces pulled and pushed with brutal power. The body of the rocket shook hard. Vibrations traveled through metal, bolts, and wires. Every system was under stress. This was not a smooth ride. This was survival. Speed increased rapidly. In seconds, Soyuz was moving faster than a bullet. The air outside pressed hard against the rocket, trying to tear it apart. This moment was called max pressure, the most dangerous point of flight. The rocket was fighting gravity below and air above. If anything failed now, there would be no recovery. In the control room, a warning beep sounded, not loud, but sharp. An engineer turned pale. Pressure spike detected. The screen flashed yellow again. The same system, the same fear. The mission director stood still. He knew this moment. Every Soyuz mission passed through it. Some survived, some did not. The narrator continued, "At max pressure, rockets are tested like never before. This is where strong designs prove themselves or break." The rocket pushed forward. Seconds felt like minutes. Then suddenly the pressure dropped. The beep stopped. The rocket had passed max pressure. A quiet relief spread through the control room, but no one celebrated. They knew the truth. The mission was still young. Far below, Earth became smaller. The blue sky slowly turned black. The curve of the planet began to appear. Soyuz was leaving home, but space did not welcome visitors. The first stage engines burned until fuel was empty. They had done their job. Now they were useless. Explosive bolts fired. With a loud separation, the first stage fell away. This moment was violent. The rocket shook again. If separation failed, the mission would end instantly, but it worked. Clean, perfect. The second stage ignited immediately. No delay, no mercy. Fire again, speed again. The Horizon's mission continued. Inside the rocket, instruments recorded everything. Temperatures climbed, systems adjusted automatically. Humans could only watch. The narrator's voice stayed calm but serious. "At this altitude, help is impossible. No rescue. Repair only forward." Another alarm sounded. This time, navigation data flickered for half a second, then it returned, but that half second was enough. An engineer whispered, "Did you see that?" Yes, they all saw it. Was it a glitch or a warning? The mission director did not answer. His eyes stayed on the numbers. Soyuz moved higher, faster, farther. The second stage burned out and separated. The final stage took control. This stage would decide everything. If it failed, the rocket would fall back to Earth. If it worked, orbit was possible. The final engine ignited, smooth, steady, the vibration changed. The sound softened. This was no longer a battle with air, this was a climb into silence. The sky outside was now completely black, stars appeared for the first time, Soyuz was almost there, but space still had one test left. The engine needed to stop at the exact right moment, not early, not late, a few seconds too long. And the rocket would fly away forever. A few seconds too short and it would fall back to Earth. Precision was everything, the countdown changed not to launch but to cut off. 10 seconds, a voice said, the control room froze again. 5, every system was watched. 3, hands clenched. 2, hearts raced. 1, the engine shut down. Silence, absolute silence. The rocket was no longer flying, it was falling but missing Earth. The narrator ended the part quietly. The engine has stopped. Gravity is still there, but now Soyuz is free. Was it in orbit or was it still falling? That answer would come next. The engine was off. There was no sound, no vibration, no fire. For the first time since launch, the Soyuz rocket was completely silent. Inside the control room, no one spoke. Silence after fire is dangerous. It can mean success or it can mean failure. Rocket was no longer pushing itself forward. It was now moving only because of speed. A speed built from fire, pressure, and perfect timing, but speed alone is not orbit. Orbit is balance. Too slow and the rocket falls back to Earth. Too fast and it escapes forever. Soyuz was now caught between these two futures. The narrator spoke softly. After the engine stopped, the most difficult part begins because now there is nothing left to control. The computers waited. Sensors measured movement, altitude, direction, numbers changed slowly, very slowly. Inside the capsule, instruments floated slightly, not because of magic, but because gravity was no longer pulling in one direction. This was the first sign, but signs can lie. The rocket had fooled engineers before. One engineer leaned closer to his screen. His eyes were tired. Velocity looks good, he said. No one replied. Altitude is holding. Still silence. The mission director raised his hand. He wanted confirmation, not hope. Check orbital parameters, he said. This was the real test. Orbit was not a place, it was a path, a never-ending fall around Earth. Soyuz had to be falling at the exact right angle. If not, gravity would win. Outside the capsule, Earth slowly moved below. The planet was no longer directly beneath. It was sliding sideways. That was important. That was good, but still not enough. Narrator continued. Many missions have failed at this stage, not with explosions, but with quiet mistakes. A small delay, a wrong number, a tiny error in math, that is how missions are lost. The Horizons mission was now waiting for one message. A simple message, but one that carried everything. The system worked quietly, calculations finished, data aligned, then a green light appeared, one, then another, then another. Orbit indicators began to turn green. An engineer spoke. Carefully, we are very close. Very close was not enough. The rocket continued to move. Seconds passed, then minutes. If Soyuz stayed stable for long enough, orbit would be confirmed, but space loves patience and it punishes hurry. Suddenly, the spacecraft rotated slightly, not planned, not commanded, a small movement but noticeable. A warning tone sounded, not loud but sharp. Attitude drift, someone said. The control room tightened again. Was the rocket stable, or was it slowly losing control? Automatic systems reacted. Thrusters fired for a split second. Small puffs of gas corrected the motion. The rotation stopped. Soyuz stabilized. The room exhaled quietly. The narrator's voice returned. In orbit, power does not come from engines, it comes from balance. Another check ran, another confirmation awaited. Finally, the main screen updated. A clear message appeared. Orbit achieved. No music played. No cheering started, just quiet smiles. Heads leaned back, hands relaxed. The Horizons mission had reached orbit, but the mission director did not celebrate, not yet. He knew orbit was not the end, it was the beginning. The rocket was now circling Earth at incredible speed, one full orbit every 90 minutes. Night and day passing again and again, but space was still unforgiving. Systems needed to be checked. Communication needed to be stable. Power needed to be balanced. Orbit gives freedom, but it also gives isolation. The rocket was now beyond help, beyond rescue, beyond second chances. The narrator ended the part with a calm but heavy truth. Soyuz has escaped Earth, but space is not a destination, it is a test that never ends. The Horizons mission was alive, but its real journey had just begun. Orbit was confirmed, but something felt strange. There was no up, there was no down, inside the Soyuz spacecraft. Gravity slowly disappeared, not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly. Objects began to float, a pen lifted from its place. A small tool moved slowly through the air, nothing fell back down. This was zero gravity. The narrator spoke calmly. People imagine space as freedom, but freedom without gravity is not simple, it changes everything. The spacecraft was moving at extreme speed, faster than any airplane, faster than sound. Yet inside it felt still, too still. The Earth moved below like a living map. Oceans shined, clouds drifted, continents passed silently. Beauty and danger shared the same view. Inside the capsule, systems adjusted to a new reality. Airflow changed. Heat moved differently. Even simple things became complex. In zero gravity, sweat does not fall, it floats. Heat does not rise. Fire behaves in strange ways. The spacecraft was designed for this, but design does not remove risk. One small failure could turn this calm into chaos. The Horizons mission now entered its quiet phase. Quiet missions are dangerous. There is no loud engine noise, no shaking, no warning signs, only data and silence. The control room on Earth stayed busy. Engineers watched every signal, every movement, every temperature change, but distance had grown. The spacecraft was now hundreds of kilometers above Earth. Commands took time, responses took time. Help was no longer instant. The narrator continued. In orbit, astronauts are never alone, but they are always isolated. The spacecraft passed from daylight into darkness. Earth's shadow swallowed it completely. Suddenly, everything outside went black. No sun, no blue sky, only stars, thousands of them, clear, sharp, endless. This moment was beautiful and terrifying. In darkness, temperature dropped quickly. Systems worked harder to keep balance. Power switched from solar to stored energy. This was another test. One engineer noticed something strange. A sensor reading moved slightly out of range, not enough to trigger an alarm, but enough to notice. Thermal variation detected, he said. The control room leaned in. Heat was moving unevenly. In space, heat has nowhere to go. If it builds up in the wrong place, systems can fail. The spacecraft adjusted its orientation, slowly, carefully, using tiny thrusters. The movement was smooth. The temperature stabilized. Another problem avoided, but space never stops testing. The Horizons mission continued to circle Earth. Every 90 minutes, day turned into night, night turned into day, time lost meaning. Inside the capsule, clock still worked, but the body felt confused. No sunrise, no sunset, only movement. The narrator added, without gravity, the human body changes. Muscles weaken, bones lose strength. Even the brain feels different. Space was not just testing machines, it was testing humans. Even though this mission was automated, human minds were still deeply connected to it. Engineers felt every risk, every unknown. Suddenly, communication dropped for a moment, not long, just a few seconds, but long enough. Screens froze, signals stopped, then returned. The control room reacted instantly. Signal blackout, someone said. Everyone knew this was expected. Spacecraft had passed behind Earth. Communication loss was normal, but normal does not feel safe. Every blackout feels like loss. The narrator's voice lowered. In space, silence always asks a question. Is everything fine or is everything lost? When communication returned, data looked normal, systems stable, power good, orbit steady. The mission survived another quiet test, but something had changed. The spacecraft was no longer just flying, it was living in space. The Horizons mission had crossed another invisible line, from launch to orbit to survival. The narrator ended the part softly. Gravity is gone, Earth is distant, and now the mission must learn how to live. But space was still watching, waiting, testing for a while. Everything looked normal, too normal. The Soyuz spacecraft moved smoothly around Earth. Data flowed without alarms, systems stayed within limits, orbit remained stable. This was the kind of moment engineers fear, because space rarely stays quiet for long. The narrator spoke softly. In space missions, danger does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives hidden. The Horizons mission had entered its operational phase. Instruments were active, systems were working, the spacecraft was doing exactly what it was designed to do. But deep inside the data stream, something small began to change. So small that no alarm noticed it. At first, it looked like nothing. A tiny drop in efficiency. A slow response from one subsystem. One engineer paused while reading his screen. He frowned. Response time is slightly delayed, he said. Others looked over. The delay was minor, almost unnoticeable, still within limits, but space missions are built on patterns, and this pattern was new. The engineer checked past data, compared it again and again. The delay was growing, not fast, slowly, dangerously slowly. The mission director leaned forward. Which system? He asked. Power distribution, the engineer replied. Power was the heart of the spacecraft. Without it, nothing worked. No communication, no control, no correction. The narrator continued. In space, power is life. Lose power and the mission goes dark. Solar panels were facing the sun. Batteries were charged. Everything looked fine. But power was not moving the way it should. Something was resisting it, something invisible. The spacecraft passed into Earth's shadow again. Solar power stopped. Batteries took over. This was normal, but this time battery drain was faster than expected, not by much but enough. The control room grew tense again. Battery usage is higher, someone said. The mission director stayed calm. Check thermal systems. Heat control was connected to power. If heat built up, systems would draw more energy to cool down. The data came back. One section of the spacecraft was warmer than planned. Not overheating, not alarming, just warmer. The narrator's voice lowered. This was the kind of problem engineers hate, not big enough to stop the mission, not small enough to ignore. The spacecraft adjusted its position slightly to spread heat. Thrusters fired gently. For a moment it helped. Then the temperature rose again. Something was blocking heat flow, something no one had predicted. A senior engineer finally said it out loud. Possible insulation damage. The room froze. Damage from where? There had been no impact, no explosion, no warning. Then someone remembered, launched the violent shaking, the stage separations, the stress, a tiny crack, a shifted layer. That was all it took. In space, tiny damage becomes serious. The narrator continued, space does not forgive small mistakes. It turns them into long problems. If insulation was damaged, heat could not escape properly, systems would work harder, power would drain faster. If power drained too much, the mission director did not finish the thought. He didn't need to. Everyone knew the spacecraft would slowly lose control, not suddenly, not dramatically, quietly, the worst kind of failure. The control team began planning, commands were prepared, adjustments calculated. Nothing could be rushed. A wrong move could make it worse. The spacecraft entered sunlight again. Solar panels charged the batteries. Power stabilized slightly. Hope returned, but the problem remained, hidden, waiting. The Horizon's mission was now facing a new challenge. Not fire, not speed, not gravity, but time. The narrator ended the part with a heavy truth. The most dangerous problems in space are not the ones that explode, they are the ones that wait. And somewhere above Earth, the Soyuz spacecraft continued its silent journey, carrying a problem no one could see. And a mission that was no longer guaranteed time became the enemy. Not space, not gravity, not distance, time. The Soyuz spacecraft continued to move around Earth, fast and silent. From the outside, it looked perfect. From the inside, it was slowly struggling. The hidden problem was still there. Heat was building in one section. Power was being used faster than planned. Systems were compensating, but compensation has limits. Narrator spoke calmly. In space, you cannot stop, you cannot rest. You can only manage what is failing. Inside the control room, screens glowed with constant data. Engineers no longer leaned back in their chairs. Everyone leaned forward now. The mission director asked the question no one wanted to hear. How long do we have? No one answered immediately because the truth was uncomfortable. An engineer finally spoke. If nothing changes, several days. Several days. That sounded like time, but in space missions it was nothing. The spacecraft needed power not just to survive, but to complete its mission. Instruments, communication, orientation, everything depended on energy, and energy was being wasted as heat. The team began to think differently, not about success, about survival. The narrator continued, when survival becomes the goal, missions change, dreams become calculations. One option was discussed: reduce activity. Shut down non-essential systems. Lower power use. Keep only the basics alive. This would save energy, but it would also limit the mission. Another option was riskier. Change the spacecraft's orientation to expose the warm area to deep space longer. Let the heat escape naturally, but this move had dangers: wrong angle, wrong timing, and communication could be lost. The spacecraft could spin or drift. The control room debated quietly, carefully, no shouting, no panic. Only controlled tension. The mission director listened to every voice. Then he asked, "What is the risk?" An engineer answered honestly, "Low chance of immediate failure, high chance of long-term loss if we do nothing." That was the decision: do something risky now or lose everything slowly later. The narrator's voice grew serious. In space, waiting is also a choice, and often the worst one. Commands were prepared, lines of code written, checked, rechecked. The maneuver would happen during the next orbit when the spacecraft entered darkness again. Timing was critical. Too early and solar power would be lost; too long, too late, and heat would continue to build. The spacecraft moved into Earth's shadow. Darkness returned. This time it felt heavier. The control room went quiet. "Begin orientation change," the mission director said. The command was sent. Seconds passed. Then the spacecraft responded. Tiny thrusters fired. Soft puffs of gas pushed against nothing. Slowly the Soyuz rotated, very slowly. This was not a dramatic movement. It was delicate, precise. The warm section turned away from Earth toward open space. Temperatures were watched closely. At first nothing changed, then a small drop, just a fraction. An engineer smiled briefly. "It's working." But space never allows comfort. As the spacecraft rotated, communication quality dropped. Signals weakened. Data slowed. Earth was no longer in perfect line. The narrator whispered the truth: to fix one problem, another must be risked. The control team adjusted antennas, boosted signal power. Energy dropped again, but heat continued to fall. A balance was forming. The spacecraft stabilized in its new orientation. Thrusters stopped. Silence returned. The next few minutes felt endless. Then the data updated. Temperature now within safe range. Power usage stabilized. Not perfect, but better, much better. The room exhaled, but no one celebrated. They knew this was not a cure, it was a delay. The mission director spoke quietly. "We bought time, the most valuable thing in space." The Horizon's mission was still alive, still moving, still learning, but the margin was thin. One more mistake, one more unknown, and the mission could still fail. The narrator ended the part with a strong reflection. In space, success is not about perfection. It is about surviving long enough to finish the journey. The The Soyuz spacecraft continued its orbit, wounded, working, enduring, and ahead of it one final decision still waited. Time had been gained, but time was never endless. The Soyuz spacecraft continued to circle Earth, silent and steady. The emergency maneuver had worked. Heat was controlled, power was stable again, but nothing was perfect. The mission was no longer running at full strength. Systems were limited. Energy was carefully balanced. Every action now had a cost. The Horizon's mission had reached its final phase. The narrator spoke calmly. Not every mission ends with fireworks. Some end with difficult choices. Inside the control room, the atmosphere was different now. The tension had changed. Fear was no longer loud. It was quiet. Engineers reviewed mission goals one last time. Data already collected was valuable, enough to justify the journey, enough to call the mission meaningful, but there was more that could be done if they pushed harder, and that was the danger. The mission director stood before the main screen. "We have two options," he said. Option 1 was safe, end the mission early, secure the data, keep the spacecraft stable, avoid further risk. Option 2 was bold, continue the mission, collect more data, push systems closer to their limits. But if something failed this time, there would be no recovery. The narrator continued, "This is where technology meets humanity. Machines do not fear risk, people do." The control room debated again, slowly, carefully. Some argued for safety, some argued for purpose. The Horizon's mission was built to explore, to reach beyond comfort, to accept risk. But it was also built to survive. The final decision could not be emotional, it had to be honest. The mission director looked at the data one last time. Heat stable. Power limited but steady. Orbit strong, he nodded. "We continue," he said, "but carefully." The mission would go on, not at full power, not at full speed, but with intelligence. The spacecraft adjusted its schedule. Instruments activated one by one, short bursts, long pauses, energy saved wherever possible. Data flowed again. Earth passed below, blue, bright, alive. From orbit, borders did not exist. Conflicts were invisible. The planet looked small, fragile. The narrator's voice softened. "From space, Earth is not divided, it is one home." The Horizon's mission sent its final major data package. Signals traveled across the void, received, stored, protected. The mission had succeeded, not perfectly, but honestly. As days passed, systems slowly aged. Power declined, components tired. That was expected. Every mission has an end. The control room prepared for final commands, not a crash, not a failure, a controlled ending. The spacecraft would be placed into a safe orbit. Silent, passive, a piece of history circling Earth. The final command was sent. Soyuz responded. One last adjustment, one last signal, then quiet. The narrator ended with calm strength. The Horizon's mission did not change the universe, but it changed what we understand about it. Soyuz had faced fire, faced silence, faced unseen danger, and it endured not because it was perfect, but because humans planned, adapted, and chose wisely. Above Earth, the spacecraft continued to move. A small object in a vast sky, a reminder that every journey beyond our world begins with risk, and every horizon exists to be crossed.